Hi everyone, I'm Kirsten from the Mass Realty Communications team, here to talk with Uli Lorimer about the Native Plant Trust and the Garden in the Woods in Framingham. I personally am really excited about this conversation because here at Mass Realty, we know that groups like this that help to teach about nature and protect nature really add immense value to the towns that they're in. And they also offer interesting ways to connect as a community. So that's what we're going to talk a little bit about today. Thank you for joining us today. Could you please introduce yourself for us a little bit?
Sure. And thank you, Kirsten, for the opportunity to speak with you. My name is Uli Lorimer. I'm the Director of Horticulture for Native Plant Trust, and we're headquartered at Garden in the Woods, based in Framingham. And my job broadly is to oversee the daily operations of the gardens, as well as a nursery facility in Western Massachusetts.
Awesome. Great, thanks so much for that. So before we dive right into the Native Plant Trust and also the gardens, I do want to ask, why should people care about native plants and their protection in their communities?
Well, plants form the basis for all of our ecosystems, along with insects. So broadly speaking, if we want to continue to breathe fresh air and have clean water to drink, you need to have native plants and healthy ecosystems in place. Culturally, we're lots of connections to the landscape. The native plants are what make New England, what makes Massachusetts look like Massachusetts, and it separates it from parts of the country. There's a long history of uses of native plants. Just to call out a couple and go right to where people connect, I can think about blueberries and cranberries, both important agricultural crops, delicious fruit, and native plants. And so there's a whole broad range of reasons why you should care about them, from ecosystems to the food on your plate.
Right, that's a stellar answer. Thank you for that. Really interesting. So we can talk about the actual Native Plant Trust now. So I understand that it was one of the nation's first conservation organizations. Could you just tell us a little bit about the history of it?
Sure. So we can trace our roots back to right around 1900. We've always been a conservation organization. So the earlier founders were very much aware of habitat loss and the importance of preserving biodiversity on the landscape, even over 120 years ago, and so began enacting and working towards conserving the plants and the habitats of New England more broadly. And that has formed the basis for our institution. And in 1960, we acquired the Garden of the Woods property as a way to showcase the wildflowers and plants of the region, so that we would have a botanic garden where people could go and see the diversity, and then also a place where we could build educational programs and other, build up community resources, in addition to the conservation work that goes on outside of the grounds of the garden. So sort of in a nutshell, we started off as a conservation organization. We still have a strong conservation focus, but we've added public horticulture and display, and public programs, the educational aspect of what we do, to our sort of portfolio of resources for the community. So I think those three things are really what make us a really valuable member of the local community here, and certainly an important member of the regional community as well.
For sure, that's so interesting. It's really novel probably for that time when the organization got started, because I think unfortunately a lot of organizations that have formed happened quite a bit later, when people were starting to realize this degradation was happening. But the founders of the Native Plant Trust there were already on top of the curve, saying we have to work at this now.
Yeah, pretty visionary. So, and I certainly one of the reasons why it's a privilege to work for an organization that has such long, deep roots in that kind of conservation action.
Yeah, for sure. That's great. And then you guys have now gone and developed all these educational programs and a place where people can actually go, because I feel like with native plants, there's this weird phenomenon where we walk by them, every day and we don't necessarily appreciate them. And there's always this grass is greener on the other side with ornamental plants and things. But then when you go somewhere and maybe you learn about that blueberries are native, then you're never going to see the blueberry the same way. And you kind of gain like a different appreciation for it.
Well, we hope to not just foster an appreciation, but a real love for the plants of the region, and really want to encourage people to become familiar with them, so that when you do spend time going on hikes on the many beautiful natural areas that are here in the area, that it's like sort of encountering old friends that you see on the trail, and not just sort of green scenery. And I think it helps connect you to the place when you're familiar with the plants and the insects and the birds and everything else that the plants support.
Right, so cool. Lots to offer.
Yeah, I mean, that's, ultimately our goal is to try to keep, as much habitat undeveloped as possible, so that there's space for all the biodiversity that we enjoy the results, the products of every day in our lives.
Right. Yeah, I think this year, a lot of bad things came out of this year, but I think if anything, the good things is that people have realized what time in nature can do for you to recuperate and make you feel better when things are stressful and when we don't have kind of the old normal of our lives. We're really taking a bit more time to appreciate that, maybe.
Yeah. Well, it might offer some of the bright things that came out for us, at least during the course of last year, with more people home and more people focusing on their gardens. We have renewed interest in people buying plants from us, which is fantastic. But also our public programs and education classes experienced a real surge in registrations and attendance, because people were home and interested and had the time to learn more about, the plants and the environments and the ecology of the region. So those were real sort of bright moments in an otherwise thoroughly dour year.
Right, that's really interesting. So people can come and buy native plants from you if they're interested in helping to cultivate more native plants in their gardens.
Yes. So we operate a retail nursery here at Garden in the Woods, and also at Nasami Farm is the name of the nursery. It's in Whately, outside of Northampton and Amherst. And we offer plants for sale that were grown from seed collected in the wild. So we offer a lot of species. And probably most importantly, all of our plants are grown without any kind of pesticides whatsoever. So we're very conscious about that, as we want to make sure that these plants support as much insect life and bird life and other sorts of life as possible. And it kind of goes in hand with the sort of style of horticulture that we present here, which is called ecological horticulture. And we're really looking at how gardens aren't just beautiful. They can be beautiful, but they also need to be ecologically functioning as well. We're really trying to marry those two concepts together as much as possible, and be an example and a source of inspiration for anybody who comes to visit the garden, and to show sort of concrete ways in which they can replicate our approach in their own home gardens. Again, in the hope that as more people begin to use natives at home, that we begin to create more connectivity on the sort of suburb and subdivision scale, and kind of build it out that way. So things like pollinator corridors and other wildlife corridors are really important. And if we take a step back from that, just a realization that we are part of nature. We are not apart from nature, and it really behooves us to make space for and learn to live with the diversity that surrounds us, because we enjoy like I said earlier, the air, the clean water, the pollination services, if you'd like. And so the way forward is really to figure out how we can both coexist together, and not sort of shoot ourselves in the foot by altering habitat too much, or put too many pesticides out. So it's really our aim is to try to encourage people to embrace a little bit of wildness in their own space.
Right. That's so cool and so important. A study just came out this year and I don't remember it, but if anybody's interested, I will put it down in the description box, that in Europe, they did a study on the diversity of birds around people's lives, and they found that more diversity made people as happy as having more money.
So that's great.
Yeah, so it's a really interesting study. I think it just came out this year, but yeah, so it's not even just us doing better for nature. It's once we start doing better for nature, nature starts doing better for us, right?
Well, let me correlate that with a couple other studies that came out that so yards that have a minimum of 70% native plants support the greatest diversity of insect life, and therefore also the greatest diversity of bird life.
Right.
So, if seeing birds and hearing them makes you happy, which clearly does, then you need to give them the food the birds need to eat, which are insects, and the best way to rear lots of insects are on native plants.
Right.
So they're all really intimately connected with one another.
Right.
That's kind of at the core of what our message is. And, we try to practice what we preach through the horticulture displays, through all of the public programming and so forth. And then certainly the conservation wing is really aimed at making sure we don't lose the rarest of the rare, and the species that are threatened by climate change, by human activities. So we're really trying to cover the gamut from all the common stuff all the way through to the really beautiful and unusual as well.
Right, that's so cool. So if somebody comes down to the Garden in the Woods, they can learn about this stuff, they can buy native plants. Can they also just come down for a day with the family and walk through the gardens? And what else is there to do?
Well, so public gardens are an important resource for the community because they offer experiences at different scales. And what I'm driving at is, if you are the kind of person that really wants to know exactly what plant is what, we have a lot of things labeled with botanical names. We have really excellent interpretive signs throughout the garden that talk about the displays and how they fit into larger ecosystems. So you can seek out that kind of information, but it also offers a sort of less heavy-handed experience, which is a really beautiful place to go for a stroll. It's, days like today, we have lots of shade. If there's a nice breeze, there's benches where you can sit down and unwind and kind of, escape from the built environment and the hustle and bustle, and you can listen to those birds that make you happy, and really, center yourself and connect yourself with nature in a way that isn't all about learning names and information about ecosystems. And so it really offers that whole wide range of experience to people. And particularly with families, because I think it's really important to expose, the next generation of environmental stewards to the diversity, to the sounds, to like everything it is to value being outside. And so we offer all of that here at Garden of the Woods. So really, whatever you're seeking, if it's information, if it's inspiration, or if it's just a way to escape from whatever your pressures of your life might be, we have a spot for you here.
Right, that's incredible. Sounds like a beautiful way to spend the afternoon for sure. And like you said, whether you're looking to learn or just totally disconnect, that's great.
Yeah, that's for me one of the biggest powers of public gardens is that it doesn't have to be about explicitly about learning something. It's also just about being in the space in that moment of time and paying attention to how it makes you feel, and it's everything from lowering your heart rate to, feeling safe, feeling excited, feeling, inspired, calm, all sorts of, it has a, something we don't really talk about very much, but I think there's also like an emotional and spiritual aspect to being in beautiful landscapes, is very much a personal experience for everyone, and one that I think is just as important as coming away with concrete information from a visit to a place like ours.
Right, that's so cool. So other than the stuff that people can do in their own gardens by buying the native plants and that kind of thing, how else can people get involved with the Horticulture Society, with the Native Plant Trust?
Well, so I would of course would encourage people to become members. We have lots of different membership benefits, including free admission and discounts on buying plants and things. And that also gives you access to our public programs. And so we have a catalog of over 200 different programs now that we're featuring in-class programs, but the majority of them are online. So,
right.
And some combination or hybrid of online and in-person classes. And it's a whole wide variety of topics to choose from. Best thing would likely be to visit our website, which is nativetrust.org, and explore some of the drop-down tabs about learning and about visiting the garden and how to buy plants. If you're really interested in conservation work, we have a really fantastic long-running program called the Plant Conservation Volunteer Program, or PCVs as we call them for short.
Okay.
And these are trained volunteers that help us collect information on populations of rare plants throughout the region. And we would not be able to, do the work we do on such a broad scale without the help of our volunteers. And they're a really crucial part of the whole program. And so if you have time on your hands and you're interested in getting involved, again, there's information on our website to find out about how you can get involved in helping our regional plant conservation efforts.
Right, that's awesome. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of different ways to meet people, to get involved, to find some like-minded people who are also interested in this kind of thing. And I'm sure for total beginners too, that have never even thought about what a native plant is before, that there's room for them there too.
Yeah, absolutely. No, interesting. Just I was thinking about our location of the garden, because it was a property that was here long before any of the subdivisions and houses that surround it were built. People often are curious why there's a garden that's sort of tucked back in a residential neighborhood, and it's because we were here before the neighborhood sprung up around it. But it's also a good example of how important saving space and how important using native plants can be in that kind of residential scale. And many of our immediate adjacent neighbors are longtime regulars and members who love to just stroll up the hill and take a turn through the garden. So we definitely have good relationships and connections with the immediate surrounding community as well.
That's great. That's good to hear. And hopefully, I guess they're also almost expanding the garden by using native plants on their own properties and those kind of things as well. Right. That's so cool. Awesome. So that's all the history and what you guys are up to now. Is there anything kind of coming in the future that you guys have planned that's exciting, or is everything just running smoothly as it usually does?
Well, so we just released a pretty important report in collaboration with the Nature Conservancy called the Plant Diversity Report. And what this is a look at how much land throughout New England is protected or put in conservation, what kinds of habitats that land comprises of, and not we're meeting sort of global and regional targets for the preservation of priority habitats, of places that have a lot of high diversity or have rare plants in them. And the report also looks at various climate change scenarios and tries to help land managers and people who are interested in overall habitat conservation make good decisions about where to put their money and how much land really need to set aside in order to be as resilient as possible for whatever the future may hold. And this is of course the big question mark of what will New England look like in 5 years or 10 years time, given the trajectories that people think we're on.
Right.
And so it's actually a pretty groundbreaking and important report, because it gives people the tools to make decisions for what, the best case scenario of what the future might look like. And so, I'm very proud of our conservation team and Nature Conservancy for working hard to put this together. There's, decades of data behind all of this. And so that's sort of our, what we're currently focused on promoting and trying to get the word out, because it really is a fantastic document.
Mm-hmm.
And so again, we've got the whole report on our website. From the horticulture end, I have a book coming out next year. It's a little bit early to talk about it, but it's going to be a book through Timber Press about 225 native plants that are great for gardens. So to advance the use of native plants in design spaces and home gardens. And so that'll be exciting when it actually gets published and released, but we're thinking spring of next year likely.
Right.
Please stay tuned to find out more information about that as that gets closer to being published.
Perfect. That's exciting.
And as always, our public programs continue to add exciting and new topics, and our catalog seems to grow every year. So again, take a look at what we've got. I'm sure there's something at every experience level and interest level that can help people be exposed and get interested in our ecosystems and our native plants.
Great. Awesome. So many opportunities for sure. The website's going to be linked down there in the description for people to take a look, and hopefully if they're in the area to become a member, check out some classes. And it's cool to see that you guys have something all the way from, a personal individual level up to urban planning. So there's definitely something useful for everybody through that.
Yes.
That's excellent. Awesome. Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, lastly, also, please consider following us on social media. We have a great Instagram page at Native Plant Trust, and Facebook as well. Less so on Twitter, but certainly Instagram and Facebook are other good places to find out just interesting information about native plants and what we're up to.
Right. Excellent. Yeah, for sure. I'll link all of those down below so people can find them super easily. And just before we wrap up, is there anything else that you wanted to mention? Maybe I forgot about, or?
No, I mean, I think that using native plants is actually really quite easy to do in gardens, and I really want to sort of applaud and celebrate people who are making the steps towards incorporating more plants in their design spaces. I think one of the other sort of bigger challenges for us is to try to influence or see more native plants used on a commercial scale. So thinking, shopping malls, supermarket parking lots, corporate campuses, these do make up a significant amount of land in our daily landscapes and travels, and are all connected with in some way, adjacent to woodlots and other natural areas. And so, creating all that connectivity and really showing that these plants can be used in formal settings as well as informal settings. All of this are, good steps towards beginning to heal our planet and providing as much resources for the life that sustains us as possible. So that would be my closing soapbox statement.
Perfect. That's a beautiful soapbox. We love it. Thanks so much. Well, I really appreciate you joining me today, Uli, and I bet you people have learned a lot, and hopefully, if somebody hasn't been involved in native plants before, they're thinking about it, or somebody who's been looking for more resources can go and check you guys out. And that's it from us today. So for anybody watching, I hope you enjoyed the video, and thank you for joining us. And if you do want to do an interview with us as well, with your society, restaurant, establishment, just go to our social media or our website and get in touch. We'll see you next time.
All right. Thank you so much, Kirsten.